There's no supplementary agenda?
No, there is not. However, I would like the public and council to know that item 15B, the offer to purchase, on the current agenda has been pulled by administration. So just an FYI, 15B has been pulled.
Disclosures of pecuniary interest, direct or indirect, for open session agenda items and the general nature thereof. Councillor Oche.
Thank you, Your Worship. 15C, as I own one of the businesses that are on the list.
Councillor Hall.
15C for me as well. I own one of the businesses.
Councillor Wright.
Process to be followed for each application will be as follows. The application will be announced by name of applicant, the type of application, the municipal file number, and its location. The mayor will ask if there is anyone present other than the applicant. Council will be asked if it has any questions of administration. The applicant will be asked if he or she has any comments. Administration will be asked if they have any comments based on any discussion that may have occurred. Council will be asked what action it wishes to take with regard to the application. If someone other than the applicant or the applicant's agent indicates an interest in the application, Council will proceed as follows. Administration will present the report. Council will be asked if it has any questions of administration. Individuals or their agent present with an interest in the application other than the applicant will be asked to proceed to the podium, provide their name and address council with their comments, concerns, or questions. Council will be asked if it has any questions of each presenter. The applicant will be asked if he or she has any comments. Council will be asked if it has any questions of the applicant. Administration will be asked if they have any comments based on any discussion that may have occurred. Council will be asked what action it wishes to take with regard to the application. Notice, if any person or public body that files an appeal of a decision of council in respect of the proposed applications does not make oral or written submissions to the municipal clerk of the corporation of the municipality of Chatham-Kent before the proposal is approved, they are not entitled to appeal a decision to the local planning appeal tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to add the person or public body as a party to the appeal. Notice of passing. Information on council's actions tonight will be posted on the municipal website, www.chatham-kent.ca. All persons receiving notice of this meeting will receive a notice of the passing of a bylaw relating to any of the planning applications presented here tonight, if approved, including appeal procedures. Any other person who wishes to receive a notice of passing or a notice of council's decision must submit a written request to the municipal clerk.
Item 7A, applications for consent and removal of H holding symbol, 494112 Ontario Limited, 42 to 46 Mill Street West, Community of Tilbury, West Kent.
Is the applicant, his or her agent, present? If so, please raise your hand. Seeing none, is there anyone present other than the applicant who wishes to speak to this application? If so, please raise your hand. Seeing none, what action would council like to take with regard to the application? Councillor Oche.
I'd like to move this recommendation.
Councillor Harrigan.
I'll second it.
Questions? Seeing none, put to vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes 18-0. 7B, application for consent and zoning bylaw amendment, 1056395 Ontario Inc., 7372 Grand River Line, Community of Dover, North Kent.
Is the applicant, his or her agent, present? If so, please raise your hand. Recognized. Is there anyone present other than the applicant who wishes to speak to this application? If so, please raise your hand. Seeing none, what action would council like to take with regard to the application? Councillor Foss?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move the recommendations.
Councillor McGrail? Questions? Seeing none, let's put to vote.
Councillor McGregor? All votes are in. Motion passes 18-0. 7C, application for consent and zoning bylaw amendment, James and Mary Pickering, RJ Properties, Inc., 20402 Communication Road, Community of Harwich, South Kent.
Is the applicant, his or her agent, present? If so, please raise your hand. Recognized. Is there anyone present other than the applicant who wishes to speak to this application? If so, please raise your hand. Seeing none, what action would council like to take with regard to this application? Councillor Latimer?
So move the recommendation.
Councillor Scotchy?
Second the recommendation.
Any questions? Seeing none, let's put the vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes 18-0.
Item 8A. Water and wastewater development charges in Part 12, Municipal Act 2001. We have a presentation by Gary Scandlin, Watson Associates, Economists Limited. And then afterwards, we'll be taking any deputations from the public, and then discussion and voting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of Council, I'd like to provide a presentation on the Development Charges Act and on the proposed bylaw that would be before you tonight. Here we go. There we are. This is a public meeting under the Development Charges Act, very similar to many other public meetings. We'll go through a presentation, then you can receive any comments. I'm happy to answer any questions. The Development Charges Act provides for a process where we release a background study for a minimum 60 days, and within that period we must undertake the public meeting, and then after the 60-day period, Council can consider the bylaw. So we've fulfilled those conditions, and that's why I'm before you tonight. Development charges have been around for about 60 years. They were originally under the Planning Act, but then since 1989 we've had different incarnations of the Act, and most recently it went through some refinements as of January 1st, 2016. Is to recover the growth-related capital costs associated with both residential and non-residential growth. And generally, it's in addition to those very localized costs that developers will pay for as part of their subdivisions. And the second bullet point identifies that those localized costs may be internal roads, water mains, sewers, street lights, etc. So under the Act, that's called a local service. And so there's a very localized cost that the developers pay for as part of their development. And then on top of that, there's development charges which pay for the broader costs, which may be for the transmission mains, water treatment, sewage treatment, etc. Very simply, the calculations we go through under the Act, we identify the amount, type, and location of growth. We identify the servicing needs, and that translates into capital projects. And then we deduct any grant subsidies, other contributions. Consider if we build water mains or sewers, is there any direct benefit to the existing development? And then there's a mandatory 10% deduction for non-water, wastewater, roads, police, fire types of costs. That doesn't apply here. There's historic service standards for most of the other services, but it doesn't apply to water and wastewater because it's overridden by environmental legislation. And then just moving from one bylaw to the next, we rationalize the DC reserve funds. When we've netted out all those deductions, we then allocate the benefit between residential, non-residential growth and divide it by the original growth to come up with the charges. So very simply put, from what I've just talked about, on the above, we have the net dollar amounts that we're trying to recover that will service the growth, and then we divide it by the residential and non-residential growth to come up with the costs. So very simply put, that's what the calculations that are provided in this background study are following those calculations, and that's what we're presenting this evening. Now, your bylaw was undertaken 5 years ago, and since that last bylaw, there have been changes that have been introduced by the province. They've made some adjustments to eligible and ineligible service definitions. It really doesn't apply here because it's your water and wastewater services are eligible. The background studies consider area rating. It's something that you're required to do. Your charges are applicable only within the water and the wastewater servicing areas. They're not applicable across the entire municipality, so you do have area rating. Annual report of the treasurer, they made some adjustments to provide a little bit more transparency. We sent out the adjustments to staff a couple of years ago, so they've been following that. There's no additional levies I'm going to come back to in a minute. It's really going back to that local service policy, the local services that are the developer responsibilities, and I'll come back to that in a minute. And then for the most part, there's minor adjustment made to the housekeeping, for housekeeping changes to the Act. This is the one that I wanted to focus in on, and it doesn't really affect dramatically for water and wastewater. We have had, what the change is, if you look at the top part, the first bullet, it prohibits municipalities from imposing additional payments or requiring construction of a service not authorized under the Development Charges Act. So that's a change that they made. So when we're talking about the local service or the requirements of the developer, we have to be a little bit more express, a little bit more detailed in what we require the developer to build as part of their subdivision, so then there's no conflict between that and what we're including in the development charge. So we've done that for water and wastewater, so there's that clarity. And one thing we've also done is we've talked with the rest of the municipal staff with respect to, and you can see the items on the bottom, the very last bullet, we've talked to them about arterial roads. What if an arterial road is adjacent to or a collector or going through the middle of the subdivision? What about bike routes, street lights, sidewalks, etc.? So all of those different items, because the Act has talked about it, it's not just limited to water and wastewater, it's also aligning itself with the rest of those services. So in order to be clear, we've expanded the definition. Well, it was actually addressed last time, but we've expanded the definition a little bit clearer for all the services that you'd normally ask a developer to build. So right now, you don't have a development charge for roads. You don't have one for parks or recreation. You only have water and wastewater. But we've made sure within the definition that we've provided that we had that clarity, so you're not going to stumble in trying to require the developer to put in the normal works that you've done over many, many, many years. And as I say, it's just because of this one change, we're taking a little bit more time to be clear and express in our document. There are mandatory exemptions that are provided for under the Act. Not many, but Industrial building expansions, if they expand by up to 50%, no charge is payable. If I've got a single-family home and I'm going to add a couple of apartments, as long as I don't more than double the size of the house, no charge is paid. But if I got a 1,000 square foot home and I put in two 600 square foot apartments, you're going to have to pay. If you've got a medium and high density, you can add one additional unit. As well, there's a local government exemption so that you cannot impose your charges onto the school boards or within, county municipalities, upper and lower tiers, can't charge each other. And that's just a quid pro quo exemption within the local government sector. Within your abilities, you can make additional adjustments to the bylaw and exempt maybe a class of development or a type of development. In this example, a class would be industrial, an example would be church. So you could choose certain types of exemptions for there. If the charges are increasing significantly over time, you may wish to phase them in. And then there's, at the end there, talks about a redevelopment credit. And that's just to recognize that, if a developer decided to knock down 3 single-family homes and put up 10 townhouses, you'd give them a credit for what was there before, the 3 single-family homes. So it's just to make sure that you're only providing for the top-up. Right now, your current exemptions and what's included in the bylaw, and we've continued this, is places of worship wouldn't be charged, and then college and universities wouldn't be imposed the charge as well. As well, currently you exempt industrial development, and once again, we've continued on with your historic practice of not imposing the charge on development. Very quickly, when you have growth, quite often it activates the need for different types of infrastructure. Water and wastewater are probably the easiest to identify, because if you don't have the access to the water and the wastewater, you may not get a building permit if you're within the urban area. So when we take a look at that, it's not mandatory that you have a development charge, but it means that that infrastructure then has to be paid for by water and wastewater rates. So it's a very simple triangle is what you choose as a municipality to impose. And what we've included, you can see the whole hierarchy of water services, treatment, supply, storage, and the major distribution mains, and water and wastewater. Wastewater includes treatment and collection. Your current charges right now, we have singles and semi-detached. They're about $3,800. You can see a little bit more for wastewater, a little less for water. And as we go, the medium density is that multiple dwellings, the fourth one over. It's at $3,100. And then large and small apartments roughly range from $1,900 to $2,800. We've also have a category there for retirement, nursing homes, just so when we have, obviously there's a lot more of the retirement type of home, the Chartwells, coming out. So we've developed a charge so that you can impose a very large charge. Without it, you may be imposing the bachelor and 1-bedroom apartment. So we've developed a specialized charge to accommodate them. And then within the commercial and the non-residential, we have a commercial, industrial, and institutional charge, as well as one for greenhouses. So this is your current charges in effect right now. And these are the rates that we've contained within our document. You can see singles have gone up to $5,000, and then your multiples 4, and then we've got the same type of range for apartments, and continuing the retirement. And we've also been asked to take a look at a bunkhouse charge, because to make sure that it's lined up similar like the retirement home, where you're providing for additional housing units. And then the recalculated non-residential rates, as I say, are shown. We've got commercial at $350, institutional at $263 per square foot of building space, and then greenhouses at 27 cents. And this, just for ease of comparison, shows you the one versus the other, the current versus the proposed, and then there's the non-residential charges. Last couple of slides are just to show generally in the area how your charges look relative to others. So for the most part, we've got our friends to the west, Essex, and you can see that currently Leamington, when they were going through their bylaw last time, they're also going through the loss of Heinz. So at that particular point, the council decided to take a moratorium on the charges. I know there has been some discussions, but they haven't initiated a process. And Essex Harrow doesn't, there's that one quadrant of Essex, they have 4 different charges, doesn't charge. And then as you can see, as you move across, Windsor, which is the non-serviced area, has a charge of about $2,500. Then there's your charges, and as we move across, you can see that the charges increase. The highest charge is the Windsor, just over $40,000 for a single detached unit. These are the commercial charges. You see a similar type of pattern. You're at the right-hand side of the graph, the highest charges being at almost $15 in Windsor. And then in the industrial, you can see currently you've got a 0 calculated charge. We've calculated a charge for you, but then the bylaw also carries an exemption. But we showed you what the calculated amount was. If you continue with the exemption, you'd be where the blue arrow is. Once again, for industrial, the highest charges are in Lakeshore right now at next door, and that's at $8 a square foot. So that concludes my presentation. Just next steps, once the bylaw is adopted by council, there is a notice period that goes in the paper, so that has to be done within 20 days. Anybody can appeal the bylaw within 40 days, and then if there's no appeal, then we put out the DC pamphlet and such. So, Mr. Mayor, that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Scanlon. Is there any deputations from the public? Seeing none, discussion and voting by council. Councillor Thompson?
I'd just be happy to move the recommendations.
Okay.
I'm starting to do.
Seconded by Councillor Finn. Questions? Seeing none, let's put it to vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes 18-0.
Deputations, item on current agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No deputations were received for this evening.
Number 10, consent agenda. Any items of interest? Councillor Harrigan?
Just 2 quick questions on 10A2 and 10A3.
Any others? Can I get a motion for the rest of them to accept? Can I get a motion to accept? Councillor Foss?
Also move.
Seconded by Councillor Bondi. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Harrigan, 10A2.
Thank you. So just really quickly with regards to the nepotism-free hiring practices, through you, Mr. Mayor, I really appreciated the report. The question that I did have, and I'm not sure if it takes place and isn't documented or if there's not a formal structure around it, but does CK have any type of practice around internal recommendations? So for example, I work in one department, I know that I have a cousin who's a qualified engineer, so I could send an email to Thomas and HR to say, hey, I just want to put in a good word for this person. How is that handled, and is that part of the formal recruitment in terms of the file and the recruitment practice?
Thank you, Worship. We do not have a formal referral program in-house, but we have trialed it before in our ITS area, in our information technology area, when we've had difficulties recruiting talent in that particular area. But certainly we do have an informal method of referral, and that's both from employees inside of the organization and from colleagues outside in the community who sometimes you meet talent along the way that are new to our community, et cetera, and we do receive referrals that way. Those individuals do still have to go through the formal recruitment process, though.
Thank you, that's all.
Councillor Thompson?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I was the one that brought this forward some time ago, and I appreciate this information for the new council. Absolutely, I think it's great to see. Certainly clears up some questions for when we're sitting in those coffee shops and people come to you, and usually it's a specific instance where they do. In those instances, where we don't have an answer or they're pressing, how do we get that addressed?
Thank you, Worship. The best way to do that is really to call our department. You're welcome to talk to myself or another member of our HROD team who is involved in the recruitment process. There are often many things in play. You know, why did a person not get an interview might be a question. Why did they get an interview and didn't get a job might be another question. Why was someone else successful, et cetera. So really everyone is case specific, and it's most helpful if you can call us and ask us the question directly, either as a counselor and we can follow up with an individual, or if the individual would call us directly, that would also be helpful.
Okay. From your viewpoint, there's been conversations in larger cities updating their policies regarding nepotism. Where are we as far as the curve is concerned?
Thank you, Your Worship. We have had this policy in place. You can see the now. I would say that we're ahead of the curve in this regard. We did turn our mind to these matters really at the time of amalgamation. That was a good time to review all of our policies, and certainly some of them have evolved since then and only improved, but it is the reason that we don't have big problems on this front now.
All right, thank you very much.
Councillor Oche?
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to Kathy. Thank you very much for the email today when I asked you about how many we had, and approximately 130, basically, relatives. And as you said, it could be from employed anywhere as far as RVG or in the main office here or in Public Works or anything like that. But I'm assuming, obviously, we still pick the best person that's got the most qualification and experiences, like we would on any job, I would think.
Your Worship, yes.
And then, sorry, one more. Jeepers, what was my last question? And I'm assuming, again, that we try to take from within first to fill positions where there's qualification.
Your Worship, the way that we handle our recruitment process, two kind of individual ways to look at this. So let's just take quickly our non-union, for example. So we have written into our hiring practices that for non-union positions that go up to a particular grade, we post internally first and then we post externally. Then for our more senior positions, we post internally and externally simultaneously. In our unionized environments, we would follow the collective agreement, and in those cases, you're always going to post within the bargaining unit first before you would post external to the bargaining unit.
And then the very last question through you, Your Worship, would be, then I would assume that we look in Chatham-Kent first before we go to out of town, basically.
Thank you, Your Worship. In our policy, we have a hiring first in Chatham-Kent subsection in our policy. I believe, if memory serves me, this may be a former motion brought forward in an amendment in our policy from Councillor Solomon, who many years ago saw some smartness in making sure that we were taking a look at keeping the talent in Chatham-Kent. And so I would say that we incorporated this language into our policy, but important to note that we would turn our minds to someone being in Chatham-Kent first if and only if we had two candidates who had really matching qualifications and skills. So we wouldn't advantage a candidate simply because they were from Chatham-Kent. They would have to have equal skills, and then we could use Chatham-Kent as a final selection tool criteria.
Thank you.
Councillor Harrigan, can I have a motion to accept?
Absolutely, I'll
Seconded
make a motion,
by Councillor B. McGregor. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Harrigan, 10A3.
Thank you. Just another brief question. The financial implications of this note that as a result of the RFP savings, we no longer require the $250,000 inflation increase in the 2019 budget. There were some questions around how this then gets removed or was removed. So I was able to confirm with staff that it was already removed as part of the budget process. But the question that I have, Mike, for you is, would you be able to explain both for new councillors and for members of the public what would happen if this would have been approved in the budget? What happens to that budget line?
So through you, Your Worship, I think your question is that if we didn't bring that forward last week and then this was being brought forward when we didn't need that funding. I mean, we could do a variety of things. You know, you're challenged to probably, you can't always reopen the budget. I mean, that's always an option. You know, we would probably have come back with another recommendation to put those funds aside for, you know, probably mitigating future increases on benefits in particular, and that's probably what we would have recommended, but it just, you know, kind of depends on every situation on that.
And what I'm hearing is it's absolutely a council conversation that would take place.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Can I get a motion?
Absolutely a motion to accept.
Seconded by Councillor Oche. All in favor? Opposed? Notice of motion. Councillor Kirkwood-White.
Thank you, Your Worship. On your tables, you'll find a little card that says, "Make the right call." My notice of motion reads as follows. Making the right call, local promotion of N11 numbers. I, Councillor Karen Kirkwood-White, hereby provide notice that I will bring forward the following motion at the March 4th council meeting for discussion and voting. Whereas today, February 11th, is recognized as 211 Day to acknowledge the free helpline that connects residents to community and social services 24 hours each day, 365 days each year, in over 150 languages. And whereas 211 has been in operation for over 20 years in Chatham-Kent, funded by United Way in the province of Ontario. And whereas 311 is a non-emergency telephone number that residents can call in other communities to find information about municipal services, make complaints or report problems like graffiti or road damage. And whereas police services currently receives over 60,000 calls for service. And whereas it would be helpful to local residents to dial a simple 3-digit telephone number for specific situations, be it therefore resolved that administration be directed to explore the feasibility of and costs associated or savings associated with the promotion of the proper use of each of the following N11 numbers, 211, 311, and 911, including but not limited to co-branding of 211 and perhaps 311 on police, fire, and public utility vehicles, as well as through other appropriate communication channels, changing 519-360-1998 to 311, and C, undertaking an analysis for the past 3 years of the number and types of non-emergency calls going to 911, all of which could potentially save and or redirect limited human and financial resources and or eliminate duplication of services currently provided by other community partners. Thank you.
Item 12A.
Item 12A, Animal Control and Pound Services, RFP-R18-41. 48, beg your pardon, 48.
Councillor Crew.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll get that button right yet. First of all, I'd like to move the recommendations, 1 through 4. They're pretty long. I'm not going to read them.
Okay, can I get a seconder for that? Councillor Oche?
I have a few comments, if you don't mind. I just want to say a few words about the Pet and Wildlife Rescue Group. November 16, they became the animal control provider for Chatham-Kent. Now, if I was sitting around the table then, I probably wouldn't have put my hand up because they were a grassroots group and I was kind of nervous about the animal control that they could provide for a community versus a humane society or an OSPCA. Well, they've proven me wrong, and I'm very proud to say that I have full confidence in this group. They have grown. They have a local board that they report to. They have 80 volunteers. They participate in the community. They participate in not only animal control, but they participate in I can say the first strategy that I work with, we've had situations where we needed someone to deal with the animals in a home, and they stepped right up and became part of that process. No questions asked. They participate in the community and for the community. They fundraise, they have participated in and also fundraised for the new animal shelter. So I am, at this time, I'm very proud to recommend the Pet and Wildlife Rescue Group as our animal control and pound services for all of Chatham-Kent. Thank you.
Councillor Oche?
Thank you, Your Worship. Is Nancy here? Sorry. Oh, sorry, Nancy, I didn't see you back there. Through you, Your Worship, to Nancy. Nancy, receiving very many emails in the last few days, and many of them are about not picking up cats and other wildlife that throughout Chatham-Kent. I do not believe in this or in their old contract. They're not supposed to do that, right? They're not actually asked to do that in the contracts.
Thank you. Picking up cats is not part of the current animal control contract with PAWR, nor was it part of the contract with the OSPCA. It's quite expensive probably to introduce such a task as cat intake, or they do cat intake for all of Chatham-Kent, but they do not pick up. And wildlife?
Correct.
They do not as well under the contract. However, with the new proposal, we've included in there some wording that where it's in a public place where it might pose a danger, it would be, if the clerk gives permission, PAWR will attend for a cost.
Okay, so I
Minimal
just wanted to clarify that because that seems to be a sore spot with some of the public. So I wanted to confirm that. What is the rules, I guess it would be, for, say that somebody brings a cat in, and I know you hear in other places that it's there for so many days and then it's put down, euthanized basically. Is that the same with us here?
There's a number of things that can happen. It all depends on the operational manager, depending on space. They can move some across the province to other shelters. They do get involved with some TNVR and provide some spay and neuter clinics for cats that they received through grants. I'm not saying it's not going to happen. It does happen in a shelter environment, but they do their best to not have to.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Worship.
Councillor Siscotti?
Don't go too far there. So I guess I got a couple quick questions. So I, like myself, have had a lot of positive interactions with PAWR personally. But in speaking on behalf of the tax basin, my concern is that we have no other person bidding on this tender. Where the concern comes in for me is the length of the tender, having nothing else for us council to compare it to. So I guess has the municipality looked at other services in other areas that are contracted out to see if these numbers are within reason? Because I do know, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I do estimate that over the 5-year term, it's about $1 million more than it was prior. Is that correct?
Correct. And I would have to say that their bid is pretty fair. And they are increasing, they are adding additional staff. And it is additional mileage and gas and wear and tear on their vehicle, and it's going to be an increase in intake as well. Historically, we have usually only had one bidder per each ward. Just in 2016, we had the 2 bidders, the Humane Society and PAWR, for the contract for wards 2 and 6. But historically, it's always been one provider for 2 and 6, one for 4 and 5, one for Ward 1, and one for Ward 3.
So I guess basic question, has this been taken through a matrix or in a quantifier in regards to ensuring that the pricing is within reason?
It went through the RFP process, through the procurement policy. As far as comparing it to other across the province, no, that matrix was not done.
But did administration go through yourself and look at these numbers to ensure they were within reason? I get the whole process, but like I said, when we're only looking at one RFP, You know, obviously we have, you know, I guess, so we've had a lot of public inquiries about this. So I guess, I think they're a very good organization, but what would our options be basically if we only had the one RFP at this point? We just basically have to opt into a 5-year term with an organization?
Our animal control contracts in the past were usually a 3-year term with a 2-year renewal. So that's why we thought we'd try the opportunity of a 5-year term with a 2-year renewal. Again, at the end of the 5-year term, it will come back to council whether or not they wish to extend the contract. There are sort of matrix put in place to make sure they're holding up their end, to make sure they're fulfilling their contract requirements. They're making sure that the pound is operated according to OMAFRA. And did I answer your question?
Yeah, my concerns aren't with the quality of the operation. That's not my concern at all. Like I said, I've had interactions with them and it's always been beneficial. They've always been great and positive. It's just my concern is that in looking at the past agreements that there always been a 3-year term. Now we have one RFP coming in and now it's a 5-year term. So, I mean, that's just the only concern I have in regards to the length of the term, being that there is only one person putting their, the bid in, right? So, I didn't see anywhere in there that it's a 5-year term with a 2-year option. Is that correct? It's
Yes.
just a 5-year term, and then it's basically it goes back up for RFP.
No, it's a 5-year term with the option of 2 1-year periods with council's approval.
And they can be extended based on a recommendation.
Yes.
Okay, I guess that's basically answers my question.
Councillor McGrail, followed by Councillor C. McGregor.
Thank you. Humor me just for a second, first term. I just have a hard time understanding why, and please, this is something I need you to confirm, but was there not another group maybe in the tender or the RFP process and then backed out?
Yeah, I believe that Sarnia Humane did register, but then removed themselves from the register.
Okay, and there's no reason why that they did this?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you.
Councillor C. McGregor.
I think Councillor Muriel asked one of my questions. My only concern here is the length of the contract and why we would extend it out, because I had understood that Sarnia Humane Society had initially put a proposal in and had pulled it out, so I do understand that. I also know that council has received numerous emails in the last week, more to do with the quality of service or the quality of adoption of the pets that are being adopted out, and not to do with so much with our contract. So I'd like it explained exactly what our contract covers and what our contract doesn't cover, because I don't believe it covers the processes of PAR and how they do their adoptions. And I don't think that's under our jurisdiction of what we handle as far as our contract goes. But I do have a concern with the length of it, and I would like to, if possible, I'd like to modify the motion that that we go back to the 3-year with a 2-year possible extension on it as opposed to the 5-year, and keep it in line with what we have done in the past.
Do we have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Latimer?
I'll second that.
Okay, so can we get that up? Was that handed in advance, or the?
I think that's probably an amendment that would have to be voted on.
Sorry. Councillor Oche? Or sorry, Councillor Crew. So I'll call on the.
Thank you. Just a point of order. Could we get clarification on that? Because that would
Yes.
be kind of contrary to
Well,
my
it's
motion.
two. I have an amendment to the motion, so we need to vote on an amendment.
Okay.
But I also have a question on the floor. So how, like, I don't know if my question's answered first and then we deal with an amendment, or?
That's why I'm asking the
Yes.
process.
Okay, we're going to go to Mr. Norton first to comment from a legal perspective on the RFP.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. From the legal perspective, we cannot amend an RFP in that manner because they bid on a certain period of time with a certain dollar value. You imagine that if you change the period of time for example, then they might have to actually bid at a higher cost because maybe, for example, they were intending to have a life cycle on a vehicle for the full 5-year period. They might still have to buy the vehicle but not be able to expense it over the full 5 years. Might be a shorter period of time. So there's a lot of factors that go into having a fair bidding process. So what council would have to do if you want to go in this direction is you'd have to cancel the RFP, and we would have to go back out to it for a new RFP for a shorter period of time. So it's possible to do it. It just means starting the process over.
Okay, so well, I guess that's that answer, but maybe the other answer, just an explanation that, because I'm not sure that people within the community fully understand that we don't actually run the organization within. And I don't know, it could have been a blanket email or a group of people that have sent these emails out to us this week, but that's not part of what we as a municipality do with our contract. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then I have one more question when you're done.
Through your worship, part of animal control and pound service is operating the pound and is adopting out the animals that come into the shelter. Some of the things that PAWR does with their rescue side of it, we have no control over. But we do have control over the contract and what we're requesting them to do. So when they take in stray animals, even surrenders, they do go through the adoption process. While they're in the pound, they're operating the pound on behalf of the municipality as pound keepers.
Okay, so but we are not a part of that process. That's internally theirs. We don't oversee that.
Correct.
Correct. Okay. My next question was in this RFP, I also noticed there was 42,000 in there for a vehicle. Is it normal that we would contract out a service or to a provider and then provide a vehicle?
Sometimes in the RFP process, there are one-time expenses that are included with the process. Like last time when PAWR put one in, there was some startup costs that they had included in the contract. So a new vehicle is for the extra animal control officer that they're going to provide for coverage of all wards.
Thank you.
Judy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to add both a question from Councillor Sakachi and from Councillor C. McGregor is with regards to it's a lengthy contract, and if we're not satisfied, there are things in the contract that if they aren't performing at the level of which we are happy with, there are ways that we can address it. Nancy works very closely with the manager from PAWR on a daily basis, and we want to ensure that, they're operating at what the contract says. So if they happen to not being able to do that, we would have to come back to council, and there would be ways within the contract that we could address that. So hopefully that helps address any of the concern with the extra couple years.
So, Councillor C. McGregor, would you like to continue on with your motion, given the fact that we'd have to cancel this?
I was given the response that I couldn't make the motion. According to our legal advice, I was given that I could not change the terms of the RFP, so which would be changing the terms.
Mr. Mayor, so I think if the motion said to staff, go back out and do a new RFP for 3 years, that would be completely fine as a motion. What you can't do is say that you're going to make this 3 years. Like, I don't even know what number we'd put up there. I mean, the point is they didn't bid on that would be bidding on something different. So that's not possible, but it's certainly possible to make a motion to go reject this and go out and do a new RFP for a 3-year term.
So, Councillor C. McGregor, would you like to amend yours or drop, or?
I would think, yes, I'll entertain that then as a separate motion to
So the motion would now read, cancel the current RFP.
And go
Sorry,
into a new RFP.
Sorry, just point of order. There's a motion already on the floor, so we would have to vote on this, and if this fails, then you're welcome to put that up.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So we'll continue on with the initial motion that was put forward to us, recommending PAW for the 5 years plus 2 1-year. So I've got in here Councillor Latimer, followed by Councillor Hall and Councillor Pinsino. Councillor Latimer.
Through the mayor, Councillor McGregor, most of my questions were answered, but it's very clear from the I mean, I'm receiving emails up here to the last 10 minutes, all with regard satisfaction with the length of the contract, and also with needing clarification of whether they're a shelter, whether they're a rescue, or whether they're a kill. And so I think that's just the understanding of the contract. And we don't have any control over that, and I'm in full agreement that if we aren't satisfied with their meeting their contractual obligations, we bring it back. But I'm just not, at this point, I cannot support this tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So in regards to what is their role, in this particular case, they wear two hats. So it was very similar to the OSPCA when they were our animal control officers. They had two hats. So for an example, OSPCA, they had the provincial mandate of the cruelty to animals, and then they also took on our contract as an animal control contractor, and they operated that. So they wore two hats. Similarly, the rescue group has come in. Their first was they were a rescue group and operated as such in the municipality, and then they made application, or they applied for the last RFP to be our animal control contractor. So they also wear two hats. They do have a branch off that they are a rescue group, and that's a separate mandate to what they do for our animal control contractor. So they go out, they enforce our bylaw. We have spoke with them with regards to the difference between their mandate as a rescue and what we expect as a shelter. So it's very similar to how the OSPCA did it, but this is how they do it as a rescue. So they have the two mandates of the rescue and then our animal control contract. If they didn't get our animal control contract, they would just remain as the rescue and the PAWR would still exist, but we would have no animal control contractor.
Councilor Lam, you still have the floor.
I have this question. I'm being asked, is a proper shelter pound? There should be a special area for quarantining of animals so this doesn't cause other healthy animals to become ill. Do they have a special quarantine area, and how long are they expected? Are they meeting the standards? I don't even know this.
Right, so they are meeting all of the standards. Again, our manager of licensing works very closely with them, and as you're aware, we are currently building a brand new facility, which we hope to open, which we will be opening in April. And yes, we have just recently had a tour. We've seen the locations where there's quarantine dogs, where there's adoptable dogs, where there's sick dogs, and there's separate, and it's been through by the ministry to check the standards and everything. So we're building that to the expectations.
I think there's a perception, and there is definitely a perception, that they are not vetting all the animals that come into their care. But I mean, there's an amount of money. I'm totally agree that you have to.
And again, I guess I'll just speak for every animal that comes in may not necessarily been from the shelter. It could have been somebody coming forward and giving the rescue an adoptable pet to adopt out. So
Sure.
There is that fine line. We would love nothing more than to educate the public on what PAWR does, and I'm sure they're very open to answer those questions for the public also.
Thank you.
Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I think a lot of my questions have already been answered, but I'll just ask to maybe get a little bit more clarification. So I know it's been mentioned, Councillor Takachi brought it up, and Councillor Carmen McGregor, and Judy, you mentioned it as well, that there's some measures in place in the contract for kind of performance indicators and general service review throughout the contract, throughout the 5 years. So I guess my question is, how exactly is that implemented, and how often, I guess, is that, how does that work? Is it a daily review? Is it a monthly, annual? How does that work?
Through your worship, thank you. First of all, the control measures would be that they're operating the shelter in compliance with their contract, and that they're maintaining the building, because we don't want to get into the same predicament we were in last time. So, I mean, I would meet monthly with Miriam on site to make sure that we do that review and to make sure that we address any concerns that could arise.
Thank you, and maybe just a little bit more clarification on something that's been mentioned as well about, from what I understand, there is an escape clause, I guess, with it. So if these performances aren't determined to be adequate and it's not living up to expectations, you know, I guess talking about the whole 5-year contract, if it's not going, if a situation arises that it's not going well, the contract can be, there is an escape clause. Can that be confirmed?
Ms. Hoffman?
Your Worship, while they're looking for the answer for that, I just did want to point out that the particular contract that we're on right now does expire in March. That is the reason why you see this before you kickstarting in March. So come March of this year, we come to the end of that contract, which is part of the reason for our renewal now. So if this didn't go forward, we would be then in a situation of either looking for a contract extension, or potentially if PAWR didn't want to provide the service at that point in time, we wouldn't have a service provider for that period of time.
So, Mr. Mayor, maybe from a legal perspective, because there's several questions being asked about the contract, I'm just looking at it here, it has performance requirements and other services. It's a page long, requiring them to, provide the services that they've agreed to provide. Actually, there's two and a half pages of their commitments, and we could certainly hold them to that. In addition, you should know that we enter, in addition to the contract for the services they provide, we also enter into a very good lease agreement with them, because they are actually leasing that building that the clerk mentioned that we're building for them. And again, we've got a good lease agreement for maintenance of the building. So I'm confident from a legal perspective that we're protecting ourselves. And I would add, the service that I've seen them provide in the last few years has been good, and from a legal perspective, we've had no concerns with them.
Councillor Pinsino, followed by Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Worship. I guess I too had a concern with the length of time on this one. One of my questions was whether we could get out of the contract, although I've never seen us get out of a contract yet. Well, I guess maybe we did one grass contract, but it's unfortunate we only had one person bid on this. It would have been nice to have a apples to apples comparison, but I just think the length of time is too long.
Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. My question would be if, see the widow from Willimac, is that where she's from? Willimac. Now, if she passed away and she left $500,000 to the organization, considering we are primarily talking about money tonight, not that we're really going in that direction all the time, but or if they're very successful in fundraising, and if they raise a ton of money, does that impact what because we're giving them operational costs, right? So I think you know what I'm asking. Thanks.
Through your worship. So 15% of all of their donations are given back to the municipality to be held in a reserve for future maintenance of the shelters and upkeep. So as far as their fundraising, we can't touch that. That's their money, but any donation that's given to PAWR, 15% of it goes into a reserve, and currently there's $25,000 in that reserve right now. So it'll keep building, because we're not hopefully going to need it with the new shelter for several years. And the Wallaceburg shelter just got some improvements as well. So it'll just keep building, and it'll be there, and it's always our money, even if they're not the contractor in the end. So
if somebody bequests them $500,000, we get 15% of it to put into a reserve.
Yes.
And the rest of that, hundreds of thousands of dollars, is it just up to their discretion?
It's their charitable organization.
Pardon?
It's PAWR is a nonprofit with charitable and charitable as well. So they would do whatever their charity rescue would like to do with that.
So they can just do whatever they want with it, and we don't get our money back, even though somebody leaves them more than we're giving them. It's kind of it is a possibility. People they can bequest an awful lot of money. But if that's the answer, that's the answer. That's fine. That's good enough. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Bondi, just to clarify, if it was left particularly to PAWR, it would be their donation, and they're required as our contractor, should they sign this, that they give us 15%. That's to assist so that the future councils and taxpayers don't have to pay for that maintenance of that building. That's money coming back to us. So we didn't account for that, obviously, in what we were asking for, but they are giving money back to us to support animal control in the building. However, if one of those, the widow on Willimac, brought forward some money and it was donated to the municipality of Chatham-Kent for the purpose of the animal shelter, that would all of it go back to us. So it just depends on who was giving the donation to whom. Would it be PAWR or would it be the municipality? But if it is given to the PAWR, we're getting 15% of that back as their contract.
Okay, through you, Mayor Kenneth. But if it's given to the municipality,
Dollars.
directed towards PAWR, then we keep it So it all depends really on how the lawyer writes up the will, right?
If it was given to the municipality for direction to the animal shelter, it wouldn't be directed to PAWR through us. It would be directed to the shelter. Then that would be kept in a reserve.
So be very
But if
clear
it
with
was-
the lawyer when your
that's
will is being
correct.
written. Thank you very much.
Councillor Finn, followed by Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Now, I hear all the talk about dogs. An animal's an animal, a pet's a pet. We have a stray cat population across the entire municipality. I would think it's kind of cruel to leave an injured animal laying out on the side of a road, and some people have no means to bring it in. I may have been spoiled by the OSPCA, but they did in fact come out and get those animals. I'd like to know why cats are not covered.
Through your worship, you were lucky because I don't believe OSPCA did injured cats at all. Not for everyone, because I did get the complaints. It's not in this contract. It hasn't been in this contract. If we were to add it, there are just as many cats as there are dogs, if not more. So it would come with, again, substantial costs. Difficult to catch a cat unless it's injured and someone's got it at their home.
So an injured animal should be laying on the side of the road. Who do we call then? I'd like to know because that's been my calls.
PAWR is a cat intake, so if it is brought to them, they will take it in.
Then who's on the liability should somebody get bit by this animal as they're trying to take it in?
Mr. Norton, you want to take a shot at this?
Well, Mayor, I'd prefer not to, but since you're asking me, we would not, the municipality would not be on the hook if someone is picking up a wild or stray animal or injured animal and gets bit. That's not our, we wouldn't assume responsibility for that. However, I would say that one of the purposes of providing animal and a pound shelter in most municipalities is because cats are less dangerous than dogs. It's dogs that typically bite and cause significant damage. I'm not saying a cat can't, but we know that dogs can be dangerous. And we are contracting with this service provider to go out and catch these dogs when they're dangerous. That's a service that most municipalities desire to have.
Okay, so in clarification, just a second question. If the dog is running loose and they call pause, they will go out and get that dog or try to catch that dog, or is that also the finder's responsibility to contain it?
Stray dogs, dangerous dogs, injured dogs would all be part of the contract. Absolutely.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much. Just a couple of questions. I guess the first one being, would it even be feasible? Could we get something out and back by March 31st? Because that's the end of the current contract, as I understand it.
I would say no.
Okay. I don't know. The perception from a large group of people is that the PAWR already aren't meeting their performance expectations. I don't know if that's true or not. Truth be told, given the report, I don't know if anything's true. I don't know if this is a good deal or a bad deal. I don't particularly like the 5-year length, but since you're telling me we really can't go back out, we're between a rock and a hard place on this one. Yeah, I don't like much of it at all. One question, though, since Councillor Finn touched on it, could we not deal with maybe the issue of feral cats through bylaws?
That is for another night.
It is. It is.
But it could be something council could consider.
That's all I was asking, yes. All right, thank you very much.
Councillor McGrail, followed by Councillor B. McGregor.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. So my only question right now is, we've been getting these emails. There's some concern about, what happens in practices. What is the answer to, if you have an issue with the current provider, who do you call? Because obviously you're not going to call that provider. Who do you call to make your issue known? Because, we're seeing this now. We see these emails now, But up until now, I'm not sure if, you know, you've had that many complaints, and have you had that many complaints come through the municipality?
Through your worship, to be honest with you, we have not received a lot of complaints, and I think that doesn't matter who's in doing, what provider's in there doing bylaw enforcement, they're not going to be liked because they're enforcing the bylaws that are set by council. They're out there giving tickets, they're taking people to court under the Dog Owners Liability Act to put control measures on people's dogs. And also PAWR is part of the Shelter Association of Ontario, so they're getting the latest and greatest news and update, attending those meetings. So they're getting firsthand on how shelters should be run across the province. So I personally think they're doing a good job. They are filing the reports on time. They're giving me feedback. They're doing well in the court system.
But if someone does have an issue or a disagreement, they can still call the municipality, the Civic Center, and have their grievance dealt with there.
Absolutely, yes.
Councillor B. McGregor.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Similar to Councillor Thompson's comment, so I think that we've discussed far outside of what we're talking about just with renewing a contract right now. But if we chose to have a service level discussion to say address these cat issues, is that something that we do separately from this contract? Is it something that could be dealt with by this council or council in the future?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, it's definitely, if council was to give us any kind of direction of to review, you know, the current bylaws, the current level of service that we're doing, administration's always happy to look at that and go from there. But as was indicated, we have a contract that expires the end of March, and we need to be able to have that in order for dangerous dogs, dogs running at large, et cetera, to be handled. So.
Okay. And this contract is a maintenance in the same level of service that we had in the previous contract to that. Is that correct? So we're not changing the service level, we're just moving forward with renewal of the contract. Is that fair?
Correct.
We're maintaining the business, but we now have a larger facility.
Yeah. Yes. Improved, same service, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay, seeing no other questions? Get more questions? Councillor Kirkwood-White.
Forgive me, Your Worship. Given the plethora of emails that we have all received over the last week, I'm wondering whether there might be a couple of councillors that would be willing to sit down with these folks that have emailed us just to have a conversation, that we might be able to identify some things that are burning issues for them, and to ensure that through the performance measures that these concerns are in fact taken into account.
Okay, Councillor Latimer.
Councillor Kirkwood-White read my mind. It's exactly what I was going to say. The other thing was, I'm a newbie here. Is this common practice to bring back contract issues whereby if we just don't care for this contract, or information comes to light that we can't put it through, we're up against a hard rock, as Councillor Thompson says? I don't know. I'm just asking.
Maybe, Mr. Mayor, again, to clarify, council does have a choice tonight. I'm not saying you don't have a choice, right? So, but we went out, we conducted an RFP. We could have had 10 bidders, but we only had one. So that does leave you no choice except that one bidder. But you do have the choice to reject the bid tonight, not approve it. What you would have to do, I think, is probably grant a 2 or 3 month extension. That you heard staff say it would be difficult to do a new RFP by the end of March. So, I would suggest that you extend the current contract for 3 months or something. We'd have to go away and ask PAWR as good graces if they would be prepared to do the extension, obviously. And then we would go for a new RFP on whatever terms you tell us to go out and and submit again.
Okay.
So there's options.
Okay.
Sorry, I just want to clarify then, with the term is what we're talking about here. Is there a best practice that we can say that, 5 year, we've talked about 3 year, 5 year, when you look at the 5 year did you determine that it was the best practice, say that makes a lot of sense, or?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As many may know, we had one contractor since amalgamation of the same wards over and over. There isn't a plethora of animal control officers on every street corner applying. It is a lot of work of administrations, and therefore, when reviewing the time commitment to try to entice people to, if we only had a 1 or a 2 or possibly a 3-year contract, maybe they wouldn't be willing to put forward a bid because that length of time wasn't appealing to invest the time and effort to get going on that. So that's where administration landed with the 5-year term, and thinking that that would be of interest for anyone bidding to be in the game for that long, and also with administration working on working with them for that length of time. So that's how we came up with that length.
Mr. Shropshire?
Thank you. I know that a number of council members have raised concerns that have been shared over the last couple of weeks. I'm not aware at all whether those concerns have been shared directly with the people that are currently running our service or not. But these folks have actually operated the service for about 2 years. So I think in the spirit of what Councillor Kirkwood-White was suggesting, given that these folks have demonstrated a caring and a care for our community, and as well as the animals they're taking care of, I would ask that maybe there's an opportunity. I mean, I know that the team from PAWS is here, and wonder whether we could actually encourage them to sit down, receive some of the feedback, and to describe to us how they might deal with some of these issues. But from the way it's been discussed tonight, a lot of the concerns are really outside the terms of the contract or the RFP that we're actually providing, things like the cat issue and so on. Those are all real, but that's not what the contract was or the RFP. So I just think that there's let's deal with the concerns that they're real, but these folks have demonstrated a willingness to work with us, and I think they might be open to receiving that feedback.
Okay, can we put this to vote?
Motion passes 11-7.
13A, Community Development.
13A, application for exemption for part lot control, First Family Homes, Lands Boulevard, and Caleb Court, Community of Blenheim.
Councillor Kirkwood-White,
I'll move the motion.
seconded by Councillor Thompson. Any questions? Councillor Kirkwood-White.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is probably a silly question, but I did have a call several months ago from newcomers to town who inadvertently purchased property on a private road. And I want to make sure that the roads in this subdivision are the right size to accommodate snow plows and garbage trucks and all the rest of the things. And I'm learning, so forgive me if it's a silly question.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. The roads that comprise this subdivision are public municipal streets, open and constructed to municipal standards.
Any other questions? Let's put it to vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes 18-0.
13B.
Item 13B, application for exemption from part lot control, Jodamar Properties Limited, Bordeaux Place, Community of Chatham.
Councillor Solomon.
Thank you, Worship. I move the that motion.
Councillor Bondi. Second. Any questions? Seeing none, let's put it to vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes 18-0.
14A.
14A, dedicated gas tax funds for public transportation systems, April 2018 to March 2019 program.
Councillor Foss.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move the recommendation.
Councillor Latimer.
I second it.
Questions? Councillor Foss?
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess the question I have is that we don't spend all of our money on a regular basis because we're restricted to what we can spend it on. Is there any movement that we could maybe talk to the province that we could use some of that money for infrastructure, I guess? A new government, maybe we should maybe be discussing that issue with them.
Your Worship, the money that we're asking for, or council to pass for tonight, is money that's used directly in our operations budget. So it covers the extended hour service and our interurban routes. And it has to be specifically for the program.
I guess the question though is are we spending all that we're getting?
Yes, very close to it, and what we
Okay.
don't, if our operations didn't follow the exact rules and regs, that little bit that's left over, we move to our reserve, but it has to be dedicated to transportation transit.
Okay. And now, I'm not sure if you have the answer, but what would our reserves be at right now in that account?
I just reported to the Transit Committee on Friday about 4 million.
About 4 million, I guess, yeah. That 4 million, in my opinion, would probably go a long way to helping our infrastructure out. I know the Liberal government were very adamant that that's all you could use it for, where the federal government sort of gives us a free hand on the gas tax that they give us. It would be nice to see if we could maybe loosen up some of that money, I guess. So I'm not sure whether we need a motion to send a letter to the provincial government indicating that we would like to have a little more leeway, I guess, in how we spend that money.
I would like to say with the, Your Worship, with the current task force, I would rather hold off any motions until our transit task force has a chance to review our entire transit system, because we need to use those funds and target them toward increasing our service, reviewing our service and our infrastructure in transit, which has been sorely and left behind. So we're trying to use that money.
Yeah, and I have no problem with that, but I do think we have a lot of money sitting there, and it's been sitting there. So if there's a use for it, fine. But if there's not, I think, you know, we should make better use of it, I guess. That's all I'm saying. Thank you.
Councillor Oche?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, please. We have not added any services, correct? But we may after we hear from the task force.
That is correct, and of course, we will be reporting to council on a regular basis.
Okay. You just, through you, Your Worship, I know all the emails that I receive in that, and I'm not even in Ward 6 where most of the busing takes place, but there sure are a lot of people that would like to have later or on weekends because they are working out of downtown. So, thank you.
Councillor Kirkwood-White?
Thank you, Your Worship. I intended to do this under non-agenda business, but given that we're talking about gas and transit, I just wanted everybody to know that although that I was not required to give a preliminary report until April, I thought it would be prudent to let municipal council and local constituents know that the new CK Transit Task Force has launched, and in fact, we had our first official meeting on Friday afternoon. The first meeting included an update on the committee composition. We have 2 municipal councillors, myself and Councillor Latimer, 5 local citizens, 3 of whom are regular transit riders, and 1 representative of the Age-Friendly Committee. We also approved the terms of reference and the timing and frequency of the future meeting dates. And do you want me to continue
No,
or leave it till later?
we just stick to, yeah, you can give that
Okay.
in the non-agenda.
So I do want to respond to Councillor Fozz's comment that there was 1.975 million earmarked for Chatham-Kent as part of a bilateral agreement between the federal and provincial government last March. If we leverage that money with 27 cents on the dollar, and that conversation will come up as part of the task force recommendations as well over the next little while.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, let's put it to vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes 18-0.
Item 14B, Construction and Assessment Bylaw, Churchill Street, Devon Road, and Sussex Street, curb and gutter local improvements, Community Chatham.
Councillor B. McGregor.
I'll move the recommendations.
Councillor Kirkwood-White.
Thank you. I'll second.
Questions? Seeing none, let's put it to vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes 18-0.
Item 14C, 2019 Municipal Significant Events.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, for 1 second. Recommendation 5, Council, of that report. Administration has asked that event be removed from the recommendations as it no longer needs the municipally significant appointment.
Councillor Harrigan.
And I will make a motion to recommend items 1 through 4.
Seconded, or Councillor Pinsino. Any questions? Councillor Kirkwood-White.
Thank you, Your Worship. Can you define municipally significant event for me, please?
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. This is a requirement of the Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario that any event that is selling alcohol on a municipal property be approved by that municipality for the special occasion permit.
And a second question, please. Is there advance notice that must be provided? Is there a time frame included?
Yes, the AGCO has, I think it's about 8 weeks prior to the event, so they can do the paperwork. And plus, it's a little, you can't just go to your local LCBO anymore. It's all digitally done, so you lose that personal contact as well.
Any other questions? Seeing none, let's put it to vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes 18-0.
Section 15, Finance, Budget, Information Technology Services.
Item 15A, Disposition Land Bylaw.
Councillor Solomon.
Thank you, Your Worship. Since I've been talking about this for years, I'll make the motion to accept the recommendations.
Councillor Finn.
I'll second.
Any questions? Seeing none, let's put it to vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes 18-0.
Item 15B has been removed. Item 15C, Authorization of Payments to Members of Council-Owned Vendors. And I believe number 4 has been removed.
Councillor Bondi.
Thanks, Mayor Camp. Sorry, I wasn't paying attention. I have a conflict on it too.
Okay. Councillor Crew.
Thank you. I don't have any conflicts on any of these, so I'd be pleased to move the recommendations.
Councillor Pinsino.
I'll second it, Your Worship.
Any questions? Seeing none, let's put it to vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes 14-0.
16, Corporate Services.
Item 16A, Appointment Bylaw.
Councillor B. McGregor.
I'll move the recommendation.
Councillor Foss.
I'll second that.
Any questions? Seeing none, let's put it to vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes 17-0.
17, closed session reports. We did not finish, so we will be going back into it after the open session, and we'll report on it next council meeting. Rural communication items. Approval of February 11th council information package. Councillor Solomon? Councillor
You want me to
Oche?
move you want me to say?
Yes, that would be
recite
wonderful.
it? I move the acceptance of the council information package.
Okay, and Councillor Oche?
I second that.
Any questions? Seeing none? Put it to vote. Show of hands. All in favor? Opposed? Non-agenda business items. Okay, Councillor Sakachi, followed by Councillor Oche.
So my question is going to be directed to Mr. Kelly. So just so we can speak a little bit for the residents in regards to something that was brought to our attention in regards to the gravel that they're using from the railway. So we've been asked about that, and some residents have some concerns. So I just wanted to see if you could kind of go through the process to indicate what measures were taken to ensure that that gravel was effectively safe for use.
Thank you, Mayor. I've prepared a short presentation for Council's education. So thank you for the question. I'd like to go through some of the history of both of what our supplier has done and also some of the work that we do and why we arrived at this point where we're accepting this gravel. So the first is the actual railstone testing, and this is from a supplier perspective. We felt very strongly they did their due diligence. First of all, back in 2011, before they purchased the property, they conducted both a Class 1 and Class 2 environmental assessment. The Class 2 is relevant because undertakings required here are really focused more on the environmental impacts and also the public welfare. Through that process, they conducted no less than 80 borehole samples. They were all tested on that property, and in the end, the approval was granted to purchase the property. So they obviously went through that. So first of all, we have the source itself has been improved by the environment. Secondly, in 2012 and 13, they did a series of tests, both chemical and mechanical testing, with the intent to determine if it was suitable, this stone, for road aggregate. And subsequent tests that were performed from 2013 to 18, now every year they go through 3 separate samples. They conduct a complete test on those samples. The samples and the testing has been very consistent over the years, and the test results really demonstrate continually the gravel is suitable for use on road aggregate. From our side, the railstone history, we did have some concerns back in 14 about the actual gravel that was being used. We expressed those to the supplier. They went back, they did additional work, additional testing. We actually went out to the site where they processed the stone, and we made a modification to the crusher, in fact, to give us the best quality product. Since that time, CK has purchased 5,000 metric tons. In 15, we increased that in 16, 24,000. We did that to try out the material, make sure it worked okay. We were confident in 2016 that we could now move up to 100,000 tons, and that will be in place 2017, 18, and 19. So quality assurance is something that we look after. There's 2 aspects of quality assurance with gravel. The first is the particle size distribution by weight. So we use an Ontario provincial standard spec called 1010, and what it looks at, many aspects of the gravel, hardness, moisture content, etc. But primarily, we focus on the actual size of the particulate. And what I've shown you is just a chart, just for example. We primarily use granular A and M within Chatham-Kent. Those are the sieve analysis, and we conduct this analysis every 5,000 metric tons. We do so not only at the site, at the source, but also when it's delivered to Chatham-Kent. So we're very confident that we're getting the right mixture so that it will pack efficiently. Next on the environmental side is that right now there is no legislated environmental standard that exists for road aggregate. Our supplier actually went and met with the MOE and asked for that information. It is not available. We worked with a consultant to determine what would be the right standard. You see that very long 3-line description, but what's key there is the residential land use. So they decided to use the residential land use standard and compare the gravel to that particular standard. So the test results were evaluated actually by a very qualified expert. Was Mr. John Ferguson. You can see the list of degrees he has: Master's in Science, professional geoscientist, he's a geologist. He also has extensive knowledge on hazardous materials as well, which is important for the human side of the evaluation. I quote Mr. Ferguson on his evaluation. This is a standard clause that he provides every year. He reports that the findings to date do not, and I repeat, do not, indicate that the products derived from railway ballast will cause adverse effects to human health or the natural environment. They also went above and beyond, supplier did, and did side-by-side tests with railstone versus other gravel from quarries, and really found that they were extremely comparable. Lastly, we had a couple of residents who were very concerned with the gravel. They went out and did their own testing. That test came back absolutely negative as well, and it also met the requirements. So with that, that's a bit of a background on the history. I hope that's helpful to you. And we really feel, you know, as engineers, this work was initiated by my former director of Public Works. He was a professional engineer. He had his master's in engineering. He was a very smart gentleman, but we have a duty to society as well, and to the welfare of the public. There's been comments made, and it's just simply not the case that we have a code that we honor, and we're not going to put human welfare at risk. So those decisions were made in that light based on this information that we were given.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kelly. Just so, obviously, I'm far from a chemical engineer or a geologist, but basically what you are saying, that if somebody asks me on the street in layman's terms, after going through such a detailed report, that you guys have, in my opinion, by looking at this, you have taken the proper steps to ensure that this is safe for residents, this is safe to put on the ground. And then the last quick question I have, and I'll let you answer that one very quickly if you don't mind. So that those presumptions are correct, that I can confidently say that we've taken the proper procedures to ensure that it was publicly done proper.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, the answer is yes.
And then the last quick question is, what about in regards to the actual, you know, the sharpness of this material and the potential that it has to offer to, you know, damage to our equipment and residents as well. So I have had some questions and concerns from some of my constituents in my area in regards to the sharpness of this stone. Is that something that you are noting on the record, that this is occurring, or is this something that would just has been happening? You know, I know it's possible every gravel can give you a flat tire if you run over the right way, or if it's a certain sharpness, but is it more prone to do that with this sediment?
Thank you, Mayor. So you're absolutely correct that we get reports from stones that embed in vehicles, vehicle tires, and cause flats. It's always extremely difficult to know where that came from, of course. I went through the records of our ACRs. We've had 5 in the last 2 years. 3 of those were from this particular sample. 2 were from regular gravel. I should also remark to council that we get a lot of these requests on asphalt roads as well, with stones on asphalt roads, with glass on asphalt roads as well. So it occurs quite often, but the magnitude of the complaints over 2 years has been about 2.5 per year. We heard that concern early in the process, back in 2016. We went back to the supplier. He in turn went back to a stone crusher. We made some adjustments to the process, and we really felt confident that those improvements were made. So it's very difficult to say. Every stone has hardness. They have, you know, sharp edges as well. To our knowledge, this is not a problem, and we've only had 2 in 2018. So.
I just want to thank you for how detailed those slides were. I think that, you know, being you know, open here for the public to take a look at how detailed those are has major benefits, and I do greatly appreciate you bringing that to council so the public can view those slides. Thank you very much.
Councillor Oche, followed by Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to bring up what's happened in Ward 1 and actually Ward 2 as well, in Ward 3, with the river rising and the ice flow. And I'd like to thank our service desk for people coming in throughout.
Sorry, we're still dealing with the,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I believe the discussion, or sorry, correct me if I'm wrong, we still, the other people have questions about that, or are we dealing with other things? Okay. Okay, anybody else have questions regarding that? We'll deal with those first. Councillor Thompson?
Thank you very much. All of this came to light because a very diligent member of our community filed an FOI request, and there's a town hall meeting tomorrow night in Blenheim for Ward 2 from 7 till 9, and I do expect this to come up. So I guess first off, Thomas, can I get a copy of this presentation in time for that? It'll be online? Or, I mean, an email is fine, yeah, that's quite all right. And I'm going to reference some of the stuff that came out in the FOI. Huron Construction didn't like the gravel. Staff members recommended not using it due to reports from the MOE in regards to creosote, benzene, and arsenic. What changed between 2014 and our beginning to use it?
So if you look in that documentation, it's strictly based on hearsay from someone else. So our supervisors took that information, they shared it with the Director of Public Works. He in turn took that back to the supplier, and that's when additional testing was done. That's when we looked at additional process improvements and looked at further testing, chemical testing. So although that was said, there was never any proof provided. And that's one thing as engineers we need to do. We need to be dealing and making decisions based on facts. I had no facts. The Director of Public Works had no facts on that. So we went back and did our homework with the supplier, and it came back actually positive.
All right, you referenced improved processes or better processes. Can you tell me about them?
It was strictly based in the crusher itself. So we met with, we went on site to the current crusher supplier. We looked at his process and their adjustments. That's part of the sieve analysis you can look at. And we made those improvements there on site. We also made, as I mentioned, crushing, we looked at various options of how to crush raw stone, but raw stone crushed on site provided the best quality. So they were looking at shipping, they changed the shipping as well so that the raw stone directly came there and it was crushed on site and then sent for delivery.
All right, can you move on to page 4 there for me? And nope, maybe page 5. The one that referenced, yeah, there it is. The standard chosen for rail is potable groundwater condition for coarse grained soil. So reading that, you're telling, in essence, rail stone is as clean as coarse grained residential land? Or needs to be? Is that how I'm reading that?
Absolutely. It's extremely close to that. I can tell you that the consultant himself has ordered the material and put it on his home. So he's that confident of the material.
You're referencing
and this is
Mr.
the challenge,
Ferguson.
right? There's residential, commercial, and industrial. And the question is, which was the right one for roads? There is not one. That's where they went and talked to the MOE, and they really got no specific information. So the residential one represents worst case. So that's what they're testing against.
All right. And the consultant you're referencing is Mr. Ferguson, right?
That's correct.
All right, who also does work for the Ridge Landfill, and I trust him implicitly. Follow-up question. So this has no concerns as far as groundwater is concerned or health impacts beyond regular gravel, right? Like using this rail gravel is no more dangerous than using any other type of gravel?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's the information we have.
We can't possibly be the first municipality who ever had this brainwave to put rail gravel into roads, are we?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I'm not sure if we're the first or not.
It's a good thing I looked it up and found out we're not, so I'm happy for that.
I know that others have looked at it, but have others looked at it and actually used it on their roads? I know there's been studies made, but I'm not aware that they've been done, so.
Apparently, and I'll just say it, according to Capital Paving on here, there's all sorts of projects all over the place that use it in stormwater management, highway. If you've ever been on Highway 6, you've driven on top of it. I know that's asphalt, but it's all rail gravel as well. The only reason this is, again, coming up is because we have to be super sure, especially the Ward 2 councilors in regards to tomorrow night. So At this point, you've pretty much satisfied all my questions, actually, you have. Just look forward to getting a copy of that for tomorrow.
Yes,
Thank
I'll
you.
do that.
And Councilor McGrail, you have a question as well.
So, me being a new council, thank you, Mayor Caniff, sorry. It has come up with this rail gravel is the dust.
Yes.
So how are we, moving forward, gonna contend with this dust? Because it is a different dust than regular gravel dust. So how are we gonna help our community in dealing with the dust that comes off of this gravel?
Thank you, Mayor. So I pointed to this slide here, and if you go to the far right, so when we talk about dust, that's the smaller particles, right? And that's off to the side, the 0.15, 0.075 millimeters. The key when you apply gravel is you need to have compaction, and you want to eliminate as much air as you can, basically, for that compaction. So you need those small particles. We have no evidence that says the dust from this particular gravel, railstone gravel, versus dust from other gravel is any different whatsoever. What is key is the process. So our process is we lay the gravel first off. We'd like to have some moisture. We will apply water at that time, and then we will apply the dust suppressant within 2 days afterwards. It's ideal to actually have some vehicles run over that, again, to help with the compaction. And then when you place the dust suppressant over top of that, that's an ideal scenario. We have had a case I noted 2 years ago where we had a scheduling problem with the dust suppressant supplier, and he was like 4 days late, and we had a lot of complaints there. So it's very much a scheduling challenge. It's also one that it's not a case where we can have one truck come in and do all of the work on the gravel. He has to make several trips as well. So there's a capacity issue there for us, but that's reality for us. We don't have that much capacity with our current suppliers. So sometimes the dust suppressant doesn't get applied as quickly as we would like, but that's our process. And ideally, in a perfect world, we would lay that gravel, we'd have it run over a bit with some moisture, a nice light rain, and then dust suppressant, and that would be the key. So as far as we know, there's no discernible difference between dust in railstone gravel versus dust in quarry gravel. It all meets the specification, and that's that test that we're doing. So they all come out with the same specification, passing that specification. So I hear the complaints. I have no evidence to really support that, though.
Councillor Pincinot, followed by Councillor C. McGregor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Thomas. I don't believe for a minute there is any adverse health effects here. However, I think the quality of this gravel is terrible myself. I've been fighting against this since 2016. I see this year we're in line for another 100,000 tons. When this contract comes due again next year, can the council members be consulted before we head down this path again? Like we're the front line people. We deal with the public, and you say you had 2 flat tires. Well, I know myself, I've had 5 or 6 complaints of these sharp stones going into the tires. And after a rain, the black dust that's on the cars is just terrible. In my opinion, they're paying taxes to have the roads graveled, and I don't think this is a quality gravel. Thank you.
Councillor C. McGregor, followed by Councillor Wright.
Thank you, and through the mayor. You'd mentioned, Thomas, that there was about 2.5 complaints regarding tires. What about overall complaints of this product, not just tire-related incidents? And I know it'll be over 2.5 because I've made more than 2.5. So, like I know there's, and maybe they're not tracked, I don't know, but I know there is a lot of complaints. And when it was laid out in my area, I would also say that there is a difference in this dust than there is in normal gravel dust. It is oily and greasy, and I have a white vehicle. So I've driven these roads for a long time. So I would have to agree with Councillor Pincinot that I think in the future would like to have some information before we purchase more. And also with information, I would also like to, I'd like to know, is it really that great of a savings compared to other aggregate that we are doing this? And maybe you can answer that. I don't need any exact figures, but if we are actually saving 25% over purchasing gravel elsewhere, that could make a big difference to our taxpayers. So I would like to know that, but I would also like to know, it was said to me, and I don't even know if this is true, so you can answer this question for me, is that we purchase, or well, this is Integra, or the Integris area, so we're 75% shareholders, so we're regrinding up and using our gravel. But then I was told that we sell the gravel to Clark Construction or whoever is laying it, and then we turn around and purchase it back from Clark. Is that correct? They're purchasing it from us, and then we turn around and purchase it back from them when they lay it? It didn't make sense to me, but that's what was explained to me, so I need to know that that's not happening.
Thank you, Mayor. We purchased the gravel from our supplier directly.
Which would be, say, Clark or another?
No, Integris.
From Integris.
We purchased from Integris. Now, Clark do also sell the gravel as well. So that's maybe where some of your information is coming from.
So they purchase from Integris?
They
also
take the
purchase
gravel and they sell it to their customers as well.
Okay, but they're not selling it back to us.
We have a fixed
Which
price.
makes sense to me.
Yeah.
I thought that just didn't make sense when, thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate that. But I guess, you know, you've heard enough from me over the years on this gravel, and so I would like to be a part and know when this is coming forward, and I would like that it be kept track of the complaints that are coming through.
Yes.
And like I know, you know, I've talked to people that have had issues with their tires too, but I don't know that they've called and laid a complaint to the municipality. So I think there's a lot more happening out there than what is ever heard of at the municipality.
Yes, and just for information, we provided council with a report last year, July 3rd, and we went through all the details of all of the different gravel that we purchase. As far as complaints go, in 2017, we had 346 gravel complaints, of which 228 were due to grading, and 118 were due to gravel dust. So about a third of them were due to the dust itself. As far as the complaints of the gravel that we're talking about, the railstone gravel, we could not find any direct correlation that we had some areas that were appreciative of the gravel. They liked it, unlike, I understand your comments. And Councillor Pincinel, others did dislike it, so there was nothing definitive that we had when we went down and looked at the data. And this was based on our ACR data.
Just guess the only other follow-up, is there a great savings to us by using this gravel? Is that why we use it? Because I know it's not liked.
Yes.
Maybe in your side of the department it's liked, but out in the community and on the front line, it's not liked.
Mm-hmm. So thank you, Mayor. There is a savings. This is the most cost competitive gravel we have. I'm going to say it's between 10 to 15% savings. The other thing that it does, when we used to have our own quarry, the one thing I'm convinced that it did was it kept all of the other gravel suppliers very honest and competitive. And I believe this is doing it as well. That when we lose this source, now we're open to the free market, and I highly suspect prices will increase.
Thank you. I could at least give that consolation out to somebody that we're saving them 50% by using this and on their tax.
Well, I say that we're always looking for new sources as well. And, you know, again, there's other rail gravel that we could look at. Understand your concerns, and we certainly would come back to council before making that purchase.
Just one other question, sorry, it just popped into my head. If they're taking samples and they're doing gravel, if they do the regrind, like, do they avoid areas like, say, behind a factory where there might be known chemicals in the rail area there? Do they avoid those areas for regrind, or it just all gets mixed in? They just take her all and it gets mixed in?
Yes. So I don't know for sure. I'd have to ask them, but back to my first slide, they did 80 different boreholes along that entire stretch, and that's what they submitted as part of their EA. So if something was definitely there, they would have to address it. Very similar to what we've been talking about, the Navistar property, those concerns there. This is what they went through on this particular site. So, and they were able to get through and to purchase the site as well, so.
So those 80 boreholes that are going across all the different area, do you get the different variations of all of them, or is it just all put together to get an average of the 80? Because obviously there would be some areas that have chemical seepage into the rail lines, where other areas would be, you know, in the countryside would be perfectly fine.
So those 80 different boreholes, my understanding is that they would have to do 80 separate tests, right? And if something showed up, they would have to address that.
Councillor Wright?
Thank you, Worship. Thomas, myself personally last year, I probably dealt with 30 tires with stones in them. It's a big issue out in our area, but the roads are staying better where they are using the stone. The roads departments told me that the roads were in better shape when it was a little sloppy here a while ago. The other thing, when you crush stone, it creates silicone dust. Has this ever been tested to see how the silicone dust is in this stone, or? Silicone dust is harmful for the lungs. That's the only thing.
So I'd have to check, if silicone is in the dust, it would show up on the test results, which therefore would show up as a failure if it was past the legal amount, right? So I'd have to go back and look at the actual test data to confirm. But if there is a problem, again, Mr. Ferguson has looked through that and assured us that there is no risk to human health or the environment. Okay. You know, and everything is about your exposure too. I mean, if you're eating the gravel, if you're inhaling dust every single day, I mean, it's a different scenario. But you know, there is no legislated standard for gravel at this time, whether it be dust or the aggregate itself. So again, we followed our due diligence. We chose a standard that we thought was appropriate, and it was worst case of the three that were out there.
Thank you, thank you, Mr. Kelly. Okay, I think now we've covered off that, so now we can go to other. So go to Mr. Oche, followed by our Councillor Oche, and then followed by our Councillor Hall.
Thank you. I'll start over now. Sorry about that. Again, as I said, this past weekend we had quite a scare in our area with the flooding getting right up to the banks, and some of the dikes having leaks in them. So I'd like to thank our service desk for manning that 24 hours a day, our fire, our police, engineering, our contractors, the Lower Thames, the great response from the area of Jeanette's Creek when we spoke to the homeowners and that could not believe how well Chatham-Kent was out in force to help them if needed, as well as social media. Even people that aren't in that area were just applauding Chatham-Kent for how they were getting the news out to everybody and letting everybody know. But to our employees, the contractors, like I say, the Lower Thames, you did a great job, put in a lot of hours, I know, for the whole weekend, but you guys should take a pat on the back, because you guys did a great job, and thank you very much for worrying about our area, and as well as Ward 2 and Ward 3, so I really do thank you. Thanks a lot.
I just want to add to that I was out there quite a bit as well, and ran into Bill and Betsy, who are right at the scene, and they commented that they've been there 60 years, they've dealt with a lot of floods, and they said never have they gotten the service they had before when they had floods as they did now, so they were very, very appreciative. Just want to add that. Thank you. Don, you want to add to that as well?
Thank you, Worship. Councilor Roche, thank you. You stole my thunder, and I'm glad it came from council. That's perfect. But just, I think the other thing that's important is when we have an emergency like this, there was a huge amount of focus and appreciation for the excellent work done by the team, the contractors, a number of other folks that stepped up. But also there was a whole bunch of other people in making sure that all of the other municipal services continue to run. So we had snowplows out last night. There was a whole bunch of other activities. So just kudos to the entire team. Everybody stepped up. I know council members were very active with communications and just trying to get the message out. That was terrific. A special shout out to the residents who were also impacted because they were listening to the emergency responders. They complied with voluntary evacuations. They made our jobs a whole lot easier because they listened to the messaging and they did what was asked voluntarily. They opened up their property so we could get in and make sure that there were repairs to the dikes. So everybody, right from the local residents who were impacted to everybody else, did a really good job. And that's really impressive. And our community really came together at a time of need. So thanks to all that came out and continue to provide support. We're not 100% out of the woods yet. There are still major ice jams. So please continue to watch and listen to the media. And if there's anything else that's happening, I'm pretty confident the team will be back at it again. But thank you very much for the comments. It's much appreciated.
Councillor Hall?
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I just wanted to provide a couple updates and discussion about a couple of construction projects going on in Wallaceburg right now. One is at the Wallaceburg Memorial Arena. I was speaking with Jane McGee earlier today, the facility manager there. She said the contractor is on site. The front parking lot's been fenced off. The site trailer equipment is supposed to be arriving, or was supposed to be arriving today. I did want to mention this because I guess there was some confusion about it, but the accessible parking spots have been moved that were normally at the retractable doors there, and they're on the southeast side of the building now. So signs have been posted. So just as a public reminder that those accessible spots have moved. As well, there's going to be the outside steps on the south part of the arena that'll be boarded off once that starts taking place. So I just wanted to make people aware of that. I did have a couple questions for another project that's happening in Wallaceburg, the Lord Selkirk Bridge construction that started last week. And I just wondered, I know Chris is still here, and I was speaking with him earlier today. So just wondering if Chris can provide a bit of an update on the Lord Selkirk Bridge project in Wallaceburg. I know there was a few delays there, and can you also touch on and provide some details about the intersection at Murray Street and Riom Avenue in Wallaceburg? I know there was some questions from the community about that, so if you can just touch on those two things for me.
So thank you, Mayor Kenneth. The Lord Selkirk project was delayed approximately 4 days. This was due to weather as well as third-party utility locates are required for the project. So the media release went out. It was on January 30th. It identified that the bridge was going to be fully closed on the 4th. This did not happen. The bridge didn't end up getting closed until the Friday of last week. The intersection at Murray and Riom, we did identify that there will be temporary traffic signals there to accommodate the increased traffic on Murray Street as a result of the bridge closure. That's where the utility locates are. We're having problems with the locates. We identified that the corners of the intersection is quite congested with utilities and to actually accommodate the poles that are required for the traffic signals. So not to hold up the project, the overall project for the bridge, we're still moving forward with the bridge. We still close it, and the contractor reassured us that the contract completion date of the end of August is still on track. But we are currently working with the consultant and with the contractor to come up with a new option about how we can proceed with these temporary traffic signals. And once we have that information, we will update our project website accordingly. Excuse me.
Sure. Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you.
Councillor Kirkwood-White.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I had two quick items. The first, I started to update. I was given the suggestion to either bring it up under non-agenda business or to issue a news release, and I think I'll choose the latter. There are a number of points I think that the general public might like to know about, so I will work on that with the powers that be tomorrow and give the general public an update on the fact that we have launched, and we have terms of reference, we have a mandate, we have a time frame, and we have a list of issues that we're going to address as part of our work. And I will provide a fulsome report, a preliminary report, by the end of April. The other thing I wanted to mention was the documentation that's on your desk with regard to the upcoming Chatham-Kent Nonprofit Network Conference, which is held on an annual basis in the month of April, which is Volunteer Month. And given the fact that our mayor is an advocate of the voluntary sector and is featured as one of the presenters at this conference, I would encourage you to take this home and have a look at it, and strongly encourage you to attend if you can. Thanks very much.
Okay, reading of the bylaws, first and second. Oh, Councillor Oche.
Thank you. Sorry to take more time, but I thanked everybody, but I never thanked the mayor. And thank you very much for getting in contact with Melissa and I, and having us come out with you to do some of the public announcements out at the water, or the updates out at the river. And you handled it very well, everything. And once again, thank you, and thank everyone once again for everything that you did. Thank you.
Thank you. First and second reading. Can I get a Councillor Solomon, seconded by Councillor Foss. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Council going to committee. Resumption of council. Third and final reading. Councillor C. McGregor, can you read all these, please? Or sorry, Councillor B. McGregor. I was kidding. Seconder. Councillor McGrail. All in favor? Opposed? Got to turn some pages here. Resolution of council. I know we're heading back into close, but if you want to resolve or close the open session.
Yes. I would move that Chatham-Kent Council adjourn to its next meeting to be held on Monday, March 4th, 2019, and that Chatham-Kent Council authorize itself to meet in closed session on that day to discuss any matters permitted by the Municipal Act.